I wanted to focus on the topic of self-control and why self-control is something that we should not be focusing on specifically. The reason is, well, let me back up a little bit. Ever since I was a young adult, I have had chronic pain and fatigue issues most of my life, actually, probably starting from my teen years. And so I I spent so much time researching things that I should do. And of course, there's always the recommendations: eat better, exercise, do all of those things. And I always had a hard time with that. And part of that is because of a combination of both undiagnosed ADHD, which I realized I probably had but never got treated, and also the impact of chronic pain and fatigue has on your own self regulation skills. Um, when you have chronic pain and fatigue, it's really hard to get in those regular, consistent habits that are really helpful to relieve the chronic pain and fatigue. So it was kind of this icky cycle. And when I started going into coaching, I was focusing on improving, quote, self control. And eventually, the more research that I did, the more I realized that self control is really the wrong thing to be focusing on. And the reason for that is that self control is a limited resource. So the more we use it, the harder it is to use or to keep up. So when we focus strictly on willpower, for example, to do something, inevitably it's going to become more difficult to do that over time because we're wearing it out. And so it's a limited resource. And the other thing is that with self-control, focusing on self-control and willpower and that sort of thing, it often focuses on deprivation. So preventing ourselves from doing something. So when we focus on control, we're often focusing on preventing doing this and forcing ourselves to do that. And so I think when it really hit home to me was reading a book called Breaking Free from Persistent Fatigue. And she talks about 5 areas of energy balance and looking at your life from that perspective. And so kind of doing what they call an energy audit. And I have a workbook that I created that uses some of that information along with other self-regulation tools. And what I realized is that there are a lot of things when you look at energy balance that maybe aren't the standard eat better, exercise. There are a lot of things that can be energizing to you that are things that you really want to do, things that bring you joy, things that are energizing. And when we approach things with a mentality of, I have to do this, I need to do this, I should do this, I'm bad if I don't do this, that in itself is energy draining. And so when we focus on self control, it can kind of get us in this really bad cycle of pushing ourselves to do something, and then maybe we do it and we feel good about it briefly, but then kind of we lose our energy because we're feeling like we're forcing ourselves to do something, and it just becomes this icky cycle. And so rather than self control, what I've really shifted to is focusing more on self regulation. So, what's the difference between self regulation and self control? Is that control is about forcing things into being a certain way. Whereas self regulation is not just about your own internal state, but also helping manage the circumstances around you to help facilitate doing what it is that you want to do. So, things that you can do, you can use tools or modify your environment or find ways to balance your energy. All of those things involve self-regulation. And when we focus on self-regulation instead of self-control, then we can really find ourselves gaining energy because we're doing things because we want to, we're setting ourselves up for success. So, for example, if you want to do something more regularly and you really enjoy doing it, but you just forget to do it, on a regular basis, then reducing the activation energy that it takes to do that. So having it set up somewhere where it's easy to get to, it's easy to access, can make it easier to do that thing because we don't have to go through multiple steps to get there. And it can work the other way around too. So if there's something that you feel like you're wasting your time doing, like being on social media too much or whatever it is, if you want to reduce the amount that you do something, you can increase the activation energy so that it takes more steps to do that thing that you don't want to be doing all the time. So that's just one example of things that you can do to help facilitate those new habits or doing those things that you want to be doing. And so this weekend on Saturday, we have a live group call, and we're going to be talking about habit change beyond willpower. So, how we can shift our habits in a positive way, focusing on self regulation instead of self control, and using those things to help shape and do things that we want to do. And the workbook will be coming out this week in the Embracing Intensity community. Fortunately, it's one that I already had mostly done because I started reworking it last year. And so the final version will be out by Friday, hopefully earlier in the Embracing Intensity community, but it'll be available to the public in my store on Friday. And so you can take a look for that. And if you happen to be free, you can join us on Saturday at 8 a.m. Pacific for our live group call. We have them every month, and this year we're focusing on the Ignite Your Power program, which is really the whole program focuses on self regulation, but this section that we're in now is really that take action part. So we're working towards taking action towards the things that we want to be spending our time doing. So you can join us on Saturday and hope to see you there. Have a great week. Bye bye.